Hello, everyone. Today we have with us Professor Karen Yan. She's at the National Ming University in Taiwan, and she is a philosopher of mind, and she works in cognitive sciences, philosophy of cognitive sciences. So, welcome, Karen.
Thank you for having me.
So, the first question I wanted to ask you was, can you tell our viewers what it means to be a philosopher of mind and philosopher of cognitive science? Like, what kind of questions do you deal with? What do you study?
I focus on the human's cognition and consciousness, but the way I approach it is more interdisciplinary approach. So I focus more on how our scientific practice, for example, cognitive neuroscientists use what kind of scientific practice to study human cognition and consciousness, or what kind of tools, specifically therapeutic tools, psychiatrists or other physicians use to address the problems in human cognitions or their conscious experience, for example, psychiatric disorder, this kind of thing. And it requires me to master literature from different fields within philosophy and beyond philosophy. So within philosophy, I have to master literature in more traditional analytical philosophy, like metaphysics, epistemology, ethics. And moreover, on top of that, I also need to master literature in philosophy of science, because since my focus has something to do with scientific practice, so naturally I need to know what resource, I need to learn some philosophical literature about how to analyze scientific practice from philosophical perspective. But beyond that, beyond philosophy, I also need to learn literature in cognitive neuroscience, psychiatry, to understand what conceptual framework or modeling tools they use to get down to those details, the daily practice, so that it's kind of like I'm collecting data about how scientists do things on a daily basis, and then analyze those data from using philosophical literature, reflect on those data, and to come up with something philosophically significantly to say, and ultimately, which is like my important goal for me, to say something to address like ethical concern and be able to make philosophy relevant to people's life and contribute to flourishing of humanity. And that's like the ultimate goal for a philosopher.
So you said something about like looking at scientific practices, right? Like in neurosciences. So generally philosophy is construed as this, very abstract, very a priori of analysis kind of feel. We're like, oh, there's sitting in armchairs and like,
right,
thinking about things. But like you do something that it has to do much more with how scientists work, what kind of modeling they're doing, how do they how do they try to find out what they are trying to find out, what methods they are using. So I think like that it's changing, like the way people think about philosophy is changing. So what do you think is happening there? What has happened that philosophers went from like these armchair experts to now looking at how things are done?
So I have like I like to have some small joke to myself, but like I always think to myself, I haven't really said this in public, I always think to myself that I also love armchair. I do my philosophy armchair too. So armchair philosophy is if that they monopolize armchair, but armchair philosophy in our field means that they think it would be sufficient to just sit on the armchair and complete their philosophical analysis, which is a difficult job, and a lot of them have done very well, and I respect that. And then my analytical skill are trained with that tradition, and I'm really grateful because I know the value of that skill set I've learned from armchair philosophy. But what I disagree about is the sufficiency claim that that's sufficient. I mean, it's a necessary, important, so that's why I'm wanting to emphasizing that. I don't want to lose my identity as an analytical philosopher. I do my philosophy on armchair too. But in addition to that, I also, stand up and walk outside my office and to observe, for example, how neuroscientists, what do they do in their lab, right? How do they set up an experiment? why do they do the things they want to do, and then I will like ask all the why question.
Yeah.
But just to give you a heads up when you want to do that, remember to do it skillfully. Don't be like
just stand on
nagging philosopher like why. Well, they don't have time for that. So you have to like, before you do that, make sure you have some practice about how your communication skills. It's so important to make scientists you observe, or whatever subject you observe, collect data, make them comfortable. So you do not do those philosopher inner circle questioning objection kind of thing. You save that for philosophy conference. But when you go to the field, do research, kind of like an anthropologist or a social scientist, in general, qualitative researchers, there are some skills that we also need to learn and master. And a lot of it is about people skill. You have to master that, and then you can have this good, trustful, we call building rapport.
Yeah.
This relationship with the scientists you want to observe their practice, or doctor you want to observe their practice, and you then will be surprised that, wow, there's so much there, very rich data. And then it's a lot of like data for you to think hard about, okay, there's some philosophical message I can distill from this very messy empirical data I collected from real world. And then you can really exercise your philosophical skill to find pattern out of this messiness. And I get my philosopher some like a satisfaction for being a philosopher, because as a philosopher, no matter which field you work, we always get this big satisfaction for like finding the right structure, finding the right pattern. And then you still can satisfy that if you use this approach, because what I discovered is that when I collect those messy data from daily practice, and it's like a lot of time you get anxious, and they're like, oh, what am I doing? Where's the philosophy? And you have to hold on to it. And then eventually something will like start, like gradually emerge. And at that moment you will have this how to say, eureka, yes, like, oh, I found it, and this is philosophically, I can say something about it, and it's philosophically significant, and that's such great satisfaction. But you have to suffer a lot first.
But tell me, like, so this data collection and basically finding patterns in data, you need a very specific kind of training for it. Is something that you train for? Is it something?
No. So hopes for everybody. Like I was trained hardcore analytical philosophy of mind growing up. When I finished my dissertation, I'm still analyzing all different theories of mental representation, try to thinking out all kinds of logical combinations, and try to come up objection to argue against all the possibility and defend the possibility. Very typical thing you do for dissertation in analytical philosophy training. So then I think while I was working on my dissertation, I already had that feeling, but I tried to suppress it because I had to focus on finish the task at a time. But that feeling is like, a lot of time, scientists was, at the time, I'm like reading up neuroscience on consciousness and self-consciousness. And I know that by reading their literature, I know that the way they use concept is very different from philosopher ways of using concept.
Yeah.
Like it take me so much work to, nail down in a very fine-grained way different concept of mental representation. And each theory has so many package goes with it. And then now suddenly I need to like match this with the cognitive neuroscience literature. But the way they use concept it's not this fine-grained, right?
Yeah.
And then it just doesn't really line up. And I know it doesn't work, but I have to just figure out a way to do it.
Yeah.
I figure out a way, but I know that I can do better. And so that this satisfaction, that seed just like in me starting then, like when I think it's my fifth year writing dissertation.
Yeah.
And I just have that. And I think that after I got my job, that just start growing and I cannot just suppress it anymore. And I know that I have to find some way out. And that's the motivation for me to start wanting to learn something different to address that dissatisfaction of my own training and practice and how I do my philosophy. So I started looking for resources, and the first big resources is actually philosophy of scientific practice.
Yeah.
Through that, I learned, well, actually, since I was undergrad, I always go to psychology, neuroscience courses. I even attend the lab meeting. I just didn't I'm not interested in doing experiments. So I never really bothered to really, do. Yeah.
I attended a lot of biology classes and never went to the lab.
Yes. Because I want to be a philosopher. If I want to be a scientist, then I will not. I just want to be a philosopher. And I just don't like experiments. So I don't bother. I just want to read all those conceptual things and do the analysis and do my own thing. But then philosophy of scientific practice is the key message. And then it's like a wake-up call. Makes me realize that I need to move out of my comfort zone. I need to get my hands dirty. I really need to understand how they do experiments.
Yeah.
And so that's the first psychological breakthrough inside me that I was willing to get out of my comfort zone and really, those things I'm familiar with, just I'm never really willing to get my hand dirty to understand. So I have the background. It's not really starting from scratch, like a zero. But I know what they're talking about, but now I just really need to sit in their lab and understand what this is equipment for. Why do you do this? What software you use? How do you analyze your data?
Yeah.
I'm sitting there, and then I was lucky that one neuroscientist just setting up his lab at my university.
Okay.
And my friend saying, introduced me to him. He's so nice. He's like, okay, come. And then so I see them setting up the lab from scratch, including setting up a behavioral box from their mice experiment, how they do the recording, and he's teaching his grad student because he's just setting up his lab. So he's teaching students how to use the MATLAB to analyze the data. From the beginning, I see the process and I was realized, wow, this is so much more than the way I understand cognitive neuroscience before. And it's that's so important. I need this data. And then suddenly, the realization I have is that, once I have this data, I feel it's so much easier to find a new angle, cutting into a very tight, not making progress philosophical debate in the literature, because now you have very rich data. And they can help you think outside philosopher's box. The philosophers are famous for thinking outside the box, but they create the box themselves. And they now have a way to get out of this box.
Here's a question. This is I was reading your most recent paper about the empirically
informed
philosophy of mind, which is kind of like a meta-analysis of of philosophy papers that use this kind of studies empirical studies from neuroscience. But I mean, there's obviously a way to do it badly, and there's a way to do it, properly.
Yeah.
And I just want to know, if someone wants to go into this field and wants to do empirically informed philosophy of mind, what would your advice be to them? How should they proceed?
If I cut it short, because I can say a lot, but I think the number one advice is go to talk to those scientists. Don't just read the paper. That's a very big lesson I learned from my research, because through really spend a lot of time with it, seeing them, understanding how they do their daily practice. I know that oftentimes what's really happening in their cognitive process, it's not something you read on the paper.
Yeah.
So there's a danger for philosophers trying to understand how scientists conceptualize things, reason about things, and you try to understand that, infer that based on what they write in their journal article, which is usually based on the scientists I talked to, they was just because they also have the pressure to publish or perish. So the thing they write in the paper is also sometimes could just be, it's not really what happened, but this way organizing it just looks better and then higher chance to get published. And it's not really what happened at the lab. I mean, data is there, but how data is produced, how they really think throughout the process, how they conceptualize the phenomenon they want to target at, it's really not something you're gonna read or see in the paper. So the number one suggestion is if you're interested in attention, you're interested in consciousness, perception, emotion, and you want to do this empirical informed thoughts of mind, find some good scientists and really just sit in their labs and observe. I mean, of course, you would like, it's a learning curve, like a lot of jargons they talk about, you don't understand. I mean, a lot of time I have this it's existential crisis when I sit in a lab meeting and listen to them discussing how they analyze the data. I was like, what am I doing here? It's time consuming. I will have to commit 3 hours, for example, sitting through that. And then sometimes I do have existential crisis, like, what am I doing? Should I just go to my office and write another, straight analytical philosophy paper, and I might survive? Right. I guess I just, I'm not a criteria. I just want to see what's at the end to offer me, and I really sit through that thing, and then I realized that with the philosophy, I don't know. I think it's a philosophy training. It would be difficult at the beginning, but not too long. Pretty soon you can like very quickly pick out that the structure, how things put it together, and then of course ask questions nicely. And usually scientists are, at least you can find scientists that are very friendly. I'm very lucky to have all friendly scientists and doctors willing to help me understand them better. But another thing is that a lot of scientists and doctors, they actually feel a little bit flattered that a philosopher is willing to sit there and understand what I'm doing. So they're usually very friendly. You imagine if someone like some scientist say, hey, Prakhar, I want to understand. And then I want to sit. You would feel like why? You want to know my work.
So every time a scientist comes to me, like, and a biologist comes to me, like, they want to talk to me about, how I perceive how models are made.
Right.
It's like very, very nice. And I can understand, like, it goes the other way around as well when you go to them.
Indeed. Indeed. So take the advantage of that they are actually friendly and they don't be afraid of asking questions, and you'll be surprised at how fast you can learn by just sitting there. And it's actually really way more rewarding than reading a scientific journal article.
That's great. So I saw that you are working on a project called psychedelic transformation. And can you tell us a bit about it? Because I was trying to find information about it. I couldn't.
It's still secret. No, I don't know my website. Well, we just finished a proposal. It's a collaborative proposal with a team in Germany, and so we're waiting for the result. And I'm naturally very excited about this project. So without the grant we apply, I will continue to do that because during the proposal writing stage, I already built this connection with the two medical team in Taiwan. They are doing this psychedelic therapy, and I want to seize the chance to do more on it. And then I was very excited about it because this is a chance for me to kind of bring everything together. My project in the past, I moved away from philosophy of mind for a while, especially because I have a lot to learn. I will learn philosophy, scientific practice, and learn different methods and learn new science. So that takes all my time. So I kind of put philosophy of mind aside a little bit, but it's always there. Yeah. And psychedelic project is the first project in my career that I can bring back all the consciousness self training. I've been trained since undergrad to my PhD, completion of my PhD, and then scientific practice. And the qualitative research method I learned and some quantitative stuff, I can put them all together under this project.
Oh, so it's like
conversion.
It's everything you've done till now. This is what it's building up to.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
And so the setting we're gonna do is we're gonna go into those doctors' therapy session to observe and record how they perform their therapy to patient. And then we will interview doctors and patients, especially patients, about their experiences during the session after they take the psychedelics, what their conscious experience like, and then also the afterward reflection about how that experience, what do they learn from that experience? Do they get any insights? What kind of insights? And we will interview the psychiatrists who administer this session, how they design their therapy session, what protocol they use, why they use that, what kind of goal they want to achieve. So it's all like following this philosophy of scientific practice framework of framing scientific practice, analyzing patient and scientists, psychiatrists' cognitive process, and we do it by collecting qualitative data and analyze it. And so that's why I mean it come together, because at one point we need to like also bear it on the literature on conscious experience, which is what I do. The first big project I do for most of my life. So I was very happy about that.
Nice. Do you think there are ways in which us philosophers, we have this relationship with science, either through practices or even if nothing like reading scientific papers, but like to the wider society, to policy, how do we philosophers contribute to that? Do you think we do? And if we do, how do we do that?
Yeah, so the talk I gave at the conference is one example where I think a philosopher can provide important conceptual interpretive resource to lay out the space for people then can evaluate. Suppose there's some furthermore publication published, and we can use this space or interpret resource to evaluate the impact or quality of this publication. And that's something I'm still working on and eventually hoping to deliver. And the psychedelic project, which is still baby, but it has all the potential to show what philosophers can help. Because part of the reason why psychiatry now interested in this psychedelic therapy, which is already something in US back in 70, but because the drug on wards and they just stopped it. And then why there's a renaissance here? Mainly because people know that the current therapy model reached some kind of limitation. And then you still see a lot of patients with this kind of condition and suffer. And then so there's a whole field in the stage where they want to look for something different. And I think that the philosopher coming in, if we doing this thing, focusing on how to develop a new therapy model, that kind of like help push a little bit away from more like a pharmaceutical brain-based only. Not saying that brain is not important, but brain-based only model to like care more like contextual, cultural, structural, relational aspect. And psychedelic offers a very good case for you to explore this kind of therapy model where the set in the jargon it says the set and setting, but you might on more plain language you would say that it's offer an opportunity to develop this more contextual, relational, therapeutic framework, but at the same time it's a brain based, it's drug based because you still need that drug, but the same drug in different person works completely differently, and then you need therapy to help to guide the efficacy of the therapy. So it's all very interesting. And then I think the power is that if we kind of help to like jump into this analysis and help that figure out what's the appropriate model and help develop the ethical guideline, it does have potential to change this psychiatric therapy model, almost like, so to speak, paradigm shift kind of. And then philosopher actually can go there to participate using our resources in philosophy of science and philosophy and ethics too.
Thank you, Karen. So if you want to explore more about Karen and her work, we have the conference video that Karen was talking about her talk that is uploaded on our YouTube channel. But once again, thank you.
Thank you.